IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hi guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Hope you're all well and keeping safe. As a gentle reminder, if you've been enjoying the podcast, please do consider sharing this with your friends and family, or anyone who might enjoy our content. Please do also consider leaving us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Moving on to today's episode, our guest on the podcast is Mr. Darshan Dudhoria, a lawyer turned entrepreneur who is helping us rediscover India's forgotten wealth capital. Let's hop onto the episode and find out more. So with that introduction, we'd love to welcome Mr. Darshan Dudhoria, a lawyer turned entrepreneur, an ardent heritage enthusiast, and also co-owner of Bari, Kothi, Murshidabad's first luxury heritage hotel. Darshan, thank you so much for being on the Musafir Stories and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's indeed a pleasure to be a part of the Musafir Stories. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had the pleasure of hosting a variety of travelers, storytellers, writers, etc. on the podcast. And today, speaking to an ardent heritage enthusiast and a serial entrepreneur like you, it's our pleasure. But Darshan, the intro I gave was pretty brief and concise. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and also your connection to Murshidabad?
So our family, essentially, we were based in Rajasthan about 300 years back, and that's where we moved. Around that time, we moved to Murshidabad. This is around the 1600s, and around the 1700s, Murshidabad was sort of peaking in terms of wealth. If you've heard about the infamous Battle of Plassey of the year 1757. So around that time frame, our family sort of moved in there. We were ruled by the Mughal Nawabs there. And then we sort of imbibed a lot of the Islamic influences, but we were from Rajasthan. And then we ended up living in Bengal for almost about 300 years. And we were working with the Europeans. So all of that together sort of got influenced in our community, which is called the Sheherwali. Mm-hmm. So essentially with that community, so our dialect, our lifestyle, our furniture, our architecture of our houses, all of that sort of reflects that same melange of influences. So having said that, born into that family and raised in a boarding school. So I was at Sindhya School, Gwalior, one of the best 10 years of my life. Finished that, moved on. Wanted to study law, aspired to be a politician one day. So went ahead, studied law in the UK, qualified as a solicitor in England and Wales. Then something mad happened in my mind, which I can't recall anymore. And in a matter of 7 days, decided to pack my bags, move back to India, came back, started practicing as a lawyer for almost 10 years. Got into the family business, which is into silk. And then one thing led to the other, and then there was a series of events, and then Bari Kothi happened. I wanted to leave it for, literally for my daughters to see, started a little bit of restoration of that. And in a nutshell, it's become a massive elephant for them to take over.
Thank you. Wonderful, I think, encapsulation of a really long and exciting journey that you've gone through. And for, like I was talking to you even before we started the recording, in terms of a layperson's knowledge of Murshidabad, it has been very, very limited, right? All the focus has been post the Battle of Plassey, that period where Calcutta took over as the main or the significant capital in the eastern part of the country. Do you want to shed some light on Murshidabad as well, its importance and significance going back to, like you mentioned, the Nawabs, why it was so important and things like that?
Right. So to set sort of context, so Murshidabad contributed 5% of the GDP of the world in the 1700s. So 5% of the world's business was happening in this small town. around that time period, so Murshidabad essentially, I'll sort of take you down a little bit of the historical journey also of the region. So Murshidabad was earlier called Makhsudabad, and it was only when this gentleman called Murshid Quli Khan, who in fact was a Brahmin in the south, and then he joined the Mughal army, and then he over a period of, I think, a very short time span of time, he ended up being one of the favorites of the ruling Nawab. And then he decided, and he was at that point in time in Patna, and at that point in time along with him was these gentlemen who later on got the titles of Jagat Seth, and we'll talk about him also later. So he they sort of got excited with the whole dream, and Jagat Seth said that, hey, let's go to east, fertile land, Makhsudabad is great, but I'll fund you, and they were financiers, and we'll together do something exciting for the space in the region and for himself as a leading Mughal general. So went ahead to Makhsudabad, became a Nawab there, so hence Makhsudabad becomes takes over his name, Murshidabad, from Murshid Quli Khan, and therein the richness of Murshidabad came in. Beautiful palaces. Murshid Quli Khan Sahab was also, to a large extent, great patron of textile, art, culture, all of that combined. And during that period, it's sort of obviously, the 1700s and 1800s, etc. There was enough of. Although to again put context to the chronology of events, 1757 was when the Battle of Plassey happened, and thereafter, of course, that was the tipping stone in the history of India, where British the British Empire was setting stone in their sort of making the empire colonization of India. Now the interesting thing is, again, I get teased in this, and I'm just going to go back and forth, and feel free to please, if I don't make sense, to interrupt me. So it's quite interesting because how history paints Murshidabad and that tipping point of 1757. So Mir Zafar was the general to the army, the Nawab being Sirajuddaula. So history says Sirajuddaula was betrayed by Mir Zafar, and Mir Zafar, hand in gloves with Robert Clive of the East India Company, sort of take over Murshidabad, or they lose the battle of, the Indians lose the battle of Plassey. However, modern day history, led by and I'm not going to name few of the leading books and the authors right now, but modern history says today that maybe Mir Zafar was not the traitor. It was Sirajuddaula, who was fairly ignorant of his empire, was fairly callous about and careless about everything around him, to actually let go of that, and he was not involved in, because of which that, and why I emphasize in this point is because that sort of changed modern day, that changed the history of India. So that's Murshidabad, and in fact, where our family and our community settled down is this place called Azimganj. So Azimganj and Jiaganj, as it's called, are they're actually called the twin cities of Azimganj and Jiaganj, which is separated by the river. And it is said there was more wealth in Azimganj, Jiaganj than the combined wealth of the British aristocracy. Wow. So that was the power of the region. And these are not just statements made. You Google this and you'll see East India Company sort of writers writing about this. And they didn't like writing anything good about Indians for sure at that point in time. In spite of that, you would see that. So so that's Murshidabad for you. And time sort of stood still, to be honest. And then gradually around 1911, everything sort of moved back to Calcutta. Calcutta became the main sort of principal place of business also. Capital, of course, shifted prior to that. All of that happened, and then midway through, what you realize is Murshidabad gets literally abandoned, now nicknamed as the sort of the unknown wealth capital of the world. if not Asia, and then a host of series of things with the partition of Bangladesh, because we of course the Bangladesh border is nearby, to the extent with a lot of Naxalite movement that the region got affected with. So one thing that led to the other, and there was one disaster after the other, and then everything got lost. Everything got lost. In fact, all our families locked their palaces, and everyone came back to Calcutta looking for greener pastures. And then suddenly, over a period of 50, 60 years, the entire region changed. However, the last 5-7 years, everything's changing back again. Now it's becoming gradually a heritage hub. And we'll tell you the story of Bari Kothi and how we are trying to do our little bit, not to restore the erstwhile opulence, but at least to give a little bit of a sense of what used to exist back in the days.
Yeah.
And by the way, just a quick fun fact about Murshidabad. So there was a point in time. So India's Independence Day is on the 15th of August. However, for parts in Murshidabad, the Independence Day was actually on the 16th of August. Because while the independence happened, Murshidabad was given away to Pakistan, which is literally across. We are in the east and Pakistan's in the west. And thereafter, a separate treaty was signed, and then there was an exchange made, and then Murshidabad returned to India. So that's again a very interesting fact that I always like to share with in conversations.
Yeah, that's marvelous. Yeah, I certainly didn't come across that fact, and it's great to know. And even like I was telling you earlier, just in terms of the sheer significance and importance of Murshidabad, like you mentioned, 5% of the world GDP, right? We're not even talking about the country's GDP. 5% of the world
That's
GDP
right.
was being contributed by this place, this region. And just to give you some context, today India is vying to be one of the superpowers, and even to this day, India's GDP contribution to the world is a little over 3%. Right, that gives you a sense of how significant the place used to be, and it's very unfortunate that we don't talk about this enough and we don't discuss this enough. And that's why I'm really, really glad that we're speaking to you and speaking a little bit more, going back to the roots of these important places within the country. Now, tell us a little bit more, Darshan, in terms of your family's history, right? You did give us a quick overview in your introduction, but even just in terms of the community that moved here, especially from Rajasthan, the tradesmen, the bankers, or Jagat Seth also, like you made a passing reference to, like these people were really, really significant in this ascent of Murshidabad to such a stage of importance in the world stage, right? Do you want to share a brief history about that, plus also the Sheherwali community, before we can jump into Bari Kothi and talk a little bit more?
Sure. I think the easiest reference in these conversations is just if you visualize this, a man wearing a European hat, a beautiful Rajasthani kurta, along with that a Bengali dhuti, and holding a British walking stick with Mughal designed shoes. So that sort of is pretty much every second or third portrait of our forefathers. So in different combinations they're around. So when I said there was a melange of these cultural influences, I was being very serious across all. So our food. So let me just give you a glimpse of the Sheherwali food also. So Sheherwalis also happen to be Jains. And while we are Jains, we don't eat anything that grows underground. So suddenly when we want to have kachoris, you don't have aloo. So how can you replace these potato stuffings with something else? So we got in cucumber. But of course, cucumber, with a fried patty may not taste that well. So you get in some Mughal spices involved. And then curd is something, very quintessential Bengal. So all of that comes along, and our signature dish called Kheere ka kachori gets born. So right from our clothing to our food, as an example, which I just narrated, to, for example, if you look at pictures of any of these Sheherwali erstwhile palaces, mansions, right from our furniture, beautiful Victorian furniture to Edwardian furniture, to all of that combined is what sort of Sheherwalis through and through are. Leading the entire clan is, of course, Jagat Seth. And while you touched upon, I'll take the liberty of sharing a little bit more. So Jagat Seth was actually not his name.
Right.
Jagat Seth was essentially a title that was bestowed onto him. Earlier, his sort of generation above was given the title of Nagar Seth. Now, Jagat, essentially universal, Seth as in banker, universal banker. So these were title accorded because of the help, financial help they were according to the ruling sultanate, because of which he got that title of district banker and thereafter universal banker. The East India Company historians have actually, the company sort of officials have put on record that possibly Jagat Seth would have been the richest man in the world at that point in time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if somebody has read the Anarchy by William Dalrymple, right, he also has a
Yes.
great coverage of Jagat Seth, and basically states that he could, the Jagat Seth could make or break even the ruler, right? Anybody in Bengal and Murshidabad up to the level of the ruler. So that's how powerful the bankers and the community were. And just tying this back to Bari Kothi, right? Now, your ancestors moved here several hundred years ago, and while they were living here is when a lot of other popular kothis and the big palaces that you mentioned, they came about, and obviously it was followed by a period of decline when things started to move to Calcutta. So tell us a little bit more about this old restoration project that you went through to bring back Badi Kothi to life, right? And just give us a little bit of a peek into Badi Kothi and its history.
So something very, and with these things, what I've realized in my little journey in life, no matter how much you plan and what you do, there's certain things you're destined to do, and there's certain things that just pop up out of nowhere. Barikoti was that. I'm a trained professional lawyer, and there was no reason for me to get into a restoration of of this sort of stature and to do Badi Kothi and to create the ecosystem of Badi Kothi to the extent it is. But things just, lined up very interestingly. So the first sequence of, in the sequence of events, the first sort of chapter was where our family just literally, my elder daughter, who's now will be turning 7. So she was born, and we'd just gone for a trip back to Azimganj. We were in this dilapidated structure called Badi Kothi, and it's sort of something that it's not something very pleasant that you want to stay or you want to get your kids around to, etc. And something happened, and it just was that thought that, hey, you know what, even if we can restore one courtyard, maybe the kids will get to know what our forefathers were, what was the power of the community, what was the role of the community in shaping up, Indian history. Mm-hmm. So one thing led to the other, and then out of the blue, one chap from Canada walks in to one of our stores as I said, families into the silk business, and walks into one of the stores, and then one thing leads to the other, and then he gets to know we are from Murshidabad, and he says, hey, I've been wanting to go to Murshidabad, and he connects with my mother, and says that, hey, I was in your store, and I heard about this particular your connection with Murshidabad. I've come all the way from Canada. I really want to go to see the terracotta temples in Murshidabad. So can you let me know where can I stay? What can I do? And my mother said, coincidentally, we are going to Azimganj tomorrow. Why don't you come along with us and stay with us? No problem. And boom, he arrives there. Little did we knew that he was a restoration architect. There was no inkling. He'd come to shop saris for his daughter's wedding along with his daughters. 2-day break, and then one thing led to the other. He said, do you want me to restore one courtyard? And we said, hey, would you like to restore one courtyard? And next 6 months, we allocated a certain budget. We restored one courtyard, and we were fairly excited, and we felt very good about it. That's how it sort of kept growing, and one thing to the other. And then we had 150 people working on the site, and over a period of 5 years, without any major plan, we've been able to create what today is the first and possibly the only heritage hotel of its kind in East India, not just Murshidabad or Bengal, but in East India of its kind. And we'll be very soon accredited by the Government of India to be the first top category heritage hotel in East India. So coming from where we were in 2014 to 2022, it's a short span of 8 years, but it's been an incredible journey. And what great learning about our own family, about our own community, about Murshidabad, about the potential of heritage tourism in Murshidabad. And that sort of now, makes us scout around not only other palaces and excite other heritage custodians, being our cousins and other extended family members, etc., to do something with their own properties, but to the larger part of Bengal. So now we are trying to build a much larger map of promoting heritage tourism across Bengal.
Yeah. Marvelous, and such a ingenious story. It almost started like a personal calling, and now it's slowly grown into this thing that's much bigger than just the Bari Kothi, right? So really excited about this. And also, do you want to give us a quick, maybe a virtual tour of Bari Kothi? It's I was just blown away by the images. Looking, we'll definitely link those in the show notes, the description of the podcast too. But would you like to give us a quick walkthrough of the property, the different kinds of courtyards to the suites that it has? And like you said, it's really a culmination of the different influences, right? It's not, you can't say it's purely a Bengali influenced property or European. It's European. It has elements of the Bengali architecture. It has elements of the Mughal piece of it. So would you like us to give a quick overview of the different sections of the property too?
So I'll do injustice if I try to make you do a virtual walkthrough, and I think it'll be, you have to come and experience it for yourself, because what is the most important thing that we could restore was the soul of Bari Kothi, and that to me was the most important. So when you say a virtual walkthrough, just visualize 60. We don't have a single hotel management trained personnel. Everyone is from the local community. So, and all of these people who are from the local community truly feel for what they're doing. They're not doing it as a job. They're doing this as a part of their lives. They like interacting with people. They like meeting people. And with our experiences, so everything we've tried to do is literally from the heart. So, we love the river. We saw these beautiful country boats. We didn't want to make our own boat. We don't want to compete with the larger, ecosystems of India. And we can't right now. We'd be aliens if we, in Murshidabad, if we tried to do any of that. So we took the local boats on rent for a few hours, which otherwise would ferry 200 people from one side of the river to the other. We would take these boats and we would convert them in a period of 2 hours into Bari Kothi. We would get our guests to sail on that for another, as a part of our experience called tea on Ganges or lunch on Ganges. And they would come back and we would remove Bari Kothi from the boat and we would return back the boats. The boatmen are happy. They're getting some extra revenue with that. The guests are happy that they've never seen something like this before. And at the end of the day, what we're doing is we are making the first guys who actually came and thanked us was the boat association who came and said, "Thank you, you've doubled our income." So that for us became a big change in thought process of how then communities started growing. So that sort of, to be honest, it became what Bari Kothi is today. In a sort of tangible thought process, yes. So we, structurally speaking, mansions, palaces in that part of the world don't get measured in square feet, or they get measured in courtyards. So when you say, how big is your house? You don't say 5,000 square feet. You say, my house has 5 courtyards. In that, of course, we've got, Bari Kothi comprises about 7 courtyards. And with those 7 courtyards, of course, there are functionally different places that the family used to use. So there's one place called Halwai Khana, which is a block for the erstwhile. There were about 20 halwais who would be making sweets for the family. Breakfast for our family used to be 3 sweets and a glass of milk. We didn't understand breakfast until my grandmother got married into the family and she came. We love our sweets. And so one part was that. One part was called Kahani Ghar. One part was called Gaddi Ghar. One is Darbar Hall. Then you've got Aam Tala, because mangoes is so I forgot to sort of mention, Murshidabad has 108 different kinds of mangoes. And when I say 108 different varieties of mangoes, these are exotic variants. There's one which is called Kohitur, and you must please look this up online. Kohitur is sort of one of the most delicate mangoes, and possibly one of the most expensive mangoes. You can't hold a Kohitur with your bare fingers. You have to, when you pluck Kohitur off the tree, you have to pluck it with cotton in your hand, otherwise it gets your fingerprints. You have to flip Kohitur every 2 hours, otherwise it'll get upset on you and turn black from that side. So every mango, and this is one of the 108 varieties of mangoes. And, again, you could possibly do another Musafir story on just the mangoes of Murshidabad. That's the amount of content and stories that mangoes has in the region. So yeah, so Bari Koti is beautiful, beautiful terraces overlooking the river. We've got a school right next to us. There are 400 girls who go to that school. Beautiful sort of, they add such a different sort of vibe to the entire ecosystem in terms of, all the girls in school and, the chatter of students, etc. It's absolutely wonderful, surrounded by different Jain mandirs. Jain mandirs having Mughal architecture, nowhere else to be found. Narrow roads, one house touching the other, one palace touching the other. And that sort of was the entire sort of a sort of bird's eye view of Azimganj and Bari Koti.
I think it's great. Obviously, like you said, there is the tangible aspects of it where one can look and touch and feel the opulence of the place, be it the lovely chandeliers or the high ceilings or the beautiful floors and everything. And then there's the other piece of it, like I said, the soul of Bari Koti and the soul of Azimganj, of Murshidabad is also the community, right? And I think it's really great and appreciable the way that you have imbibed community within the whole experience of the property, right? Otherwise, I don't believe a sustainable experience can be created and survived without the involvement of the local community. Now, just in terms of the overall experience, obviously staying at Bari Koti is a large part of the experience, right? Just almost like turning back the clock and going back to the 1700s, 1800s, almost feels that way. But even beyond Bari Koti, in and around Azimganj and Murshidabad, there's several important structures. Structures that came into being after the Sheherwali community, as well as the overall Jain community from Rajasthan kind of moved here, which is in the way of a lot of these Jain temples, right? There are a lot of the Jain temples in the vicinity. Then there's also a lot of the Mughal structures, given the influence of the Nawabs in the area. So a lot of different places and experience for somebody who's visiting the place, who's visiting Bari Koti, to go around and see. Could you give some examples of the experiences you offer to your guests, Darshan, in terms of just sightseeing and experiences overall?
Right. So what we do is we for all our guests, we try and first assess what is their interest bucket. So we typically, if you were to spend 2 nights or 3 nights in Murshidabad, you have an option to sort of look at the heritage side of Murshidabad, or the textile side of Murshidabad, or the cultural side of Murshidabad. And if you sort of each one of them sounds a little exciting, then what we've got is a signature sort of show me all of it kind of an experience, where we do a mix and match of everything. So I'll take you through that journey with our signature experience. So Murshidabad, again, because of its opulence, because of the wealth, what do you leave behind with that kind of money? Of course, you leave behind fantastic tangible structures to start with. So you've got the Hazardwari Palace, which is a palace of 1,000 doors. You've got Futi Masjid. You've got the Nizamat Imambara, which is one of the largest Imambaras in Asia. You've got the Katgola Palace, beautiful sort of garden house of the Dugar family. Again, Sheherwalis of Azimganj. Along with that, you've got the Katra Masjid. You've got all these beautiful, one of my favorite is structure, Wasif Manzil. Oh my God, once and you must, it's called Wasif Manzil. If you look up this structure online and see its picture, it's sort of a Spanish, in the most, obviously I'm just trying to describe this for the ease of our listeners, that it's like a Spanish fort-based architecture that's just suddenly popped out on the riverside in a village in Bengal, overlooking a gigantic Hazardwari palace, which is entirely a Roman architecture. So they sort of, just to walk through that space, to experience all of it, and absolute in contrast are these beautiful terracotta temples. If you look at the it's called the Baranagar terracotta temples, which is again on about 10 minutes from Bari, Kothi. You'd be just amazed to see the architecture on those terracotta temples. So there's so much to see around in the region that, frankly speaking, a period of 2 days, 3 days, just going through the tangible assets of the region would take away all that time. Gardens, beautiful, and with history, with such amazing stories. You've got the, if I'm not wrong, a 400-year-old blue mosque. You've got a 1100-year-old Shakti Peeth, which is called Kirteshwari. There's a 1100-year-old structure there. So it's just absolutely mind-blowing. And all of it in what, a 20-kilometer radius? Mm-hmm. So that is one part of it, and then along with it, of course, the famous silk of Murshidabad. So Islampur is the place where you sort of till date they've got a beautiful sericulture happening around that region, and we make our guests do that experience also, where you can actually see silk yarns getting made. So that sort of becomes a very interesting experience. And with textile, you've got something called Tatipara, which is in Jiaganj. Tatipara meaning weaver's village. So you can actually sit with these weavers, you can weave with them, you can see how they weave. And they do these beautiful Baluchari saris, they do these beautiful Garat saris, which are obviously of the region. And if you just see how how organized the handloom industry, although it's extremely humble because world has changed, and we are doing our best to promote the handloom products made in that region also. So that becomes the textile part. And then 3 hours away from Azimganj is this place called Shantiniketan, which is of course is known for its textile amongst other things also. So that becomes, and then culture, cuisine, is just absolutely another sort of area of interest with Murshidabad in terms of culture, right from all these mixed influences. Bengal has its own, so you've got the beautiful Rai Beshi dance. So if you see Rai Beshi, you'd be like, well, what's the big deal? Bunch of people just jumping around, it's fine. And the moment you hear, so the story behind it, and then you're like, oh wow, it's a 500-year-old martial art based dance form. So it is said that back in the days, the royals would go from one place to the other, and midway through, if they had to be if they had to sort of camp out for the night, what do they do in the evening? So their soldiers, typically, who would be a part of their convoy, would actually set up a sort of a dance show, so to say, loosely put, for them. And that sort of gradually evolved into this beautiful dance form called Rai Beshi. Now, Rai Beshi is only found now in Murshidabad and Bankura, and pretty much nowhere else. And this beautiful troupe that we have them, be a part of Bari Kothi performances, have gone to the ITB in Berlin, have performed in different European countries, and are a sensation there. And this is just one beautiful baul music. And again, just to give you a little bit of an insight there, baul actually means mad wind. So it's an extempore kind of non-rehearsed kind of music genre, and where you actually, well, I'm generalizing it a little bit, but you take pride in your union with divine. So the lot of these songs are around celebration of death. So because of that, all the true baul artists would actually wear orange and be pure vegetarians and cook their own food and live in isolation so as to not harm others, etc., and be immersed. So baul music for them becomes a form of meditation. So again, we've got a beautiful troupe of commercial baul artists. We give them a platform platform at Bari Kothi. So it's absolutely amazing, and these are just a tip of the iceberg.
Definitely, even in terms of diversity, right? There's so much, like even these tangible experiences we're speaking of, they're so diverse that, like you said, easily 3 or 4 days is nothing. I think you're just touching or scratching the surface. And that time, one could easily spend a week and more, and
Yes,
still be
absolutely.
left with things to do. Thanks so much for kind of giving us nutshell of really what are the different things one can experience while staying in Bari Kothi and exploring just within a 20-kilometer radius, all of these different things, right? And one important aspect, and we touched upon this at the beginning too, is also the very unique Sheherwali cuisine, right? It's again a very vegetarian Rajasthani. I mean, at the core of it, you could say its influence is Rajasthani, but the adaptability of the Sheherwali community is shown even here, that all of the different influences, right, be it the Mughlai or the Bengali
Yes.
influences, all of those have also been beautifully included in this cuisine. Do you want to give us a quick peek into what some of the popular dishes or a Sheherwali meal might have to offer?
Yes. So how we make our guests experience the Sheherwali sort of food at Bari Koti. What we try and do is we do a 5-course, 7-course, sit down, 2-hour dinner, 2-hour lunch, 1-hour breakfast. So cumulatively 5 hours in a day, if you're a foodie, is what you're doing in terms of tasting Sheherwali food, because it's one part of it is tasting, but the other is why the hell has cucumber come into my kachori in my earlier example? So that storytelling is very important. How did mustard suddenly enter into my food? How Jainism seeped in, and how Jainism quickly, they wanted to give a spin therein, and how different spices came in. You've got this something called kutti mirchi ka achar. It's of course a chili pickle, and you'd be surprised. And it's made with no oil. There's rarely any pickle which is made without any oil. You've got black onion seeds, you've got brown mustard seeds, you've got fennel seeds, mango, ginger, most interestingly, dried dates, all put together, and there's a pickle. So this just gives you a little bit of idea of how experimentative Sheherwalis get with their food. You've got this very famous thing in our cuisine called kadbel ka pachak, which is actually stone apple powder, and that sort of acts as a perfect spice, an additional spice to anything that you're eating. During mango season, you've got these raw mango, black chickpea pickle. So pickles is of course a big part, but along with that, one of our signature dishes is something called pitha. Now, pitha is again a very Bengal-oriented dish, which you've got. We call it pitha. In Bengal, traditionally, it's called pithe, and typically made only around in the winters. And it's actually, literally thin pancakes with a sweet filling. It's essentially a rice flour dough, and it's rolled in with into these wafer thin circles, and it's got a very interesting sweet filling, which sort of completely gives a different taste with it, and that sort of is accompanied with something called bhapia, which are steamed dumplings, essentially made with yellow split lentils. So my daughter looks at it and says, "Oh, this is a beautiful momo," and then I realize, oh, I've never thought of it from that aspect, and it's very interesting to see how our cuisine, of course, from the traditional roti sabji, which typically an Indian vegetarian meal would entail, but we've got something called a saloni meve ka khichdi, which is sweet rice with saffron, which has a deep Mughal influence in terms of the addition of rose water, addition of saffron, cardamoms, almonds, pistachio, all of that together, and it's sweet.
Yeah, a lot of different things, and like I said, I think one thing that shows all across, right, be it the food or be it the culture or just being anything to do with the Sheherwali community, is the adaptability. I think they've so beautifully adapted to what is available locally, what are the influences that are around you, and it's reflected in.
I think
like
you've I think hit the nail on its head when you said adaptability, because that's what I think eventually all sort of everything local. If you deep dive into their history would just, they all adapt into their local surroundings. So we've got something called khatte ka pakodi, which are these gram flour fritters in tamarind water. Now that's again a very Bengal thing, but then, we had to get a lot of gram flour. We had to get a lot of chickpea in our diet, possibly as supplementing for the lack of protein in our diet, generally speaking. So, so all of that was very scientific also, because Jainism again required us to do a lot of fasts. There's a period of 4 months where we actually, strictly speaking, avoid, you should not be eating for most of the days, not eat any green vegetables also around that day, around that period. So all of that then, propelled us, the religious angle of it also propelled the evolution of the Sheherwali cuisine. And now we are very proud with the ITC hotel in Calcutta, ITC Royal Bengal, in their Indian restaurant. If you walk in and you ask for a Sheherwali thali, you'll not get it the way you get it at Bari Kothi, of course, but you will definitely be able to now sample Sheherwali thali at the ITC, and hopefully we are working with them to try and take this pan-India.
Yeah, this is marvelous. Again, I keep touching about this, but I'm just so happy and glad to hear that something that started out almost like a personal little project, a personal little initiative for you, and is now gaining so much more momentum, and it's becoming like we could showcase that now, not just to the locals or the area around Azimganj, around Murshidabad, but to the world, right? So really, really glad that this has been working out so well. And I really, really appreciate your passion in the way you think about all things heritage, think about your roots, Darshan, that you're going back and making sure that these are preserved and conserved so they can be carried forward by the future generations also. And I think if nothing else, I think one thing that clearly shows your passion to the cause is your dedication of actually recording this episode well beyond midnight, right? I think really hats off to you to be so accommodating and doing this for us. Darshan, as we start to wrap this up, any other thoughts that you'd like to share, any final thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners about Bari Kothi, about Azimganj, about Murshidabad?
Please come experience Murshidabad. It's not about Bari Kothi, and I tell this to everyone I meet. And across, in fact, while we were promoting Bari Kothi in these travel fairs, I always said it's not about Bari Kothi ever. In fact, we don't even, there are times where we talk about a 9-night itinerary where only 3 nights is Bari Kothi and the other 6 nights are actually different other regions of Bengal. So my only sort of message out there is that, everyone's seen India in a different way. You've seen India through Rajasthan, you've seen India through, Kerala, but East India is a sort of waiting to explore region of India. And in that, Murshidabad stands as an example. Please, we'd love to, host each one of you at Bari Kothi. Come experience and make sure you have enough time to come, and you'll forget the outside world.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also very well connected. It's only about 5 hours from Calcutta, right? If one's driving down, it's well connected through railways. One can fly in and like I say, even if you're coming into Calcutta, one can easily visit Murshidabad. So definitely worthwhile to make a visit. It's a very, very unique experience.
Absolutely. Just adding on to what you're saying, that the nearest airport is of course Calcutta, and from Calcutta it's either you can take a train, which is a 4-hour direct train right to Azimganj, where our boys and girls will be there to host you, and apart from that, if you love driving, then there's a beautiful 5-hour scenic drive from Calcutta. And winter's the best time. So anytime from October till March, you can't possibly go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much again, Darshan, for giving us a really quick peek into Murshidabad through Bari Kothi, right? And Bari Kothi kind of encapsulates the whole experience of Murshidabad, just combining everything from the beauty, from the different influences, be it Bengali, be it Mughal, be it Rajasthani, all of those together. Plus, I think at the heart of it, also the local community around, right? So thank you so much. And thank you for shedding more light on this forgotten wealth capital of the world, like we call Murshidabad. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seth. Thank you to Musafir Stories for having me, and hope you have a good day.
That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.